Hello, everyone. We're your hosts, Beth Moore,
and Bridget Corns.
and welcome to Click Moments, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And today we're going to be talking to you about really more about like women entrepreneurs. Both of us work with a lot of women who are striking out on their own and doing something different. And I got to thinking about this more recently, and I was thinking about how, as women, we are traditionally in either industries or businesses that were created by men. And because it was created by men, we're now trying to find our way in a male system. And so it makes sense to me that sometimes if we don't necessarily feel like we fit in a system, it makes sense to me that as women, we are starting to strike out on our own, because what we're in essence trying to do is to create business to be done in a way that is different than how it's traditionally done, because we are different in how we would run our business. What is a priority? The things that are important, the guiding tenets, the mission, the vision is oftentimes coming from a very different lens. And instead of trying to continue to have our voice heard when it's often not, many women are striking out and doing their own thing. So we wanted to talk about today, as we see so many women doing this, what it takes, what we see that it takes, what it takes for us as we strike out on our own and we try to do the work that we do in a new way that resonates as the women that we are.
Yeah, I'm just screaming up at me.
And as a woman, sometimes you have to do things very different.
Like
You're sit-
retreating to your backyard to record when you have a house full of children who still aren't in school.
yeah, yeah, and we roll with it. I mean, I remember that in COVID that so many people, so many parents were having that happen, right? But at first it was like an embarrassing thing and we were concerned about it. But what I think it did was it started to normalize it, that yeah, we're a whole person. We're actually like we're not just our job, but you're a mom. And you do what you need to do. You go to your backyard. What a beautiful opportunity to you and I have talked before about balance. And
Yeah.
so at first glance, it's a challenge, but oh my gosh, you're in your backyard having a meeting. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think it's opened up so many possibilities for me. I've been able to see the world through a really different lens, going back to our last conversation. But um, what it has allowed me to see is the interconnectedness of everything. It's brought back a sense of everything can be connected. Things can bleed over. Who says I can't um, be in a meeting in my backyard, but also taking care of my four children and also thinking about what I'm gonna make for dinner tonight and just be the multi-passionate person who I am. And also it's like I've been able to see the world in a different way. I've connected with women in multiple different countries, formed deep, strong, beautiful connections, and even to the point of let's collaborate, let's find ways that we can enrich each other's lives. And being in quarantine did that.
Right.
A really um difficult time period did something that brought me back into the cycles and rhythms and created this beautiful space. And I think that as a woman, that's one of our superpowers that we have, which is being able to see integration, being able to make things whole again,
Mhm.
being able to create peace in spaces where it didn't maybe exist before.
Mhm. That integration and wholeness came up for me recently. I'd like to share a story. I had been working on a retreat that I'm going to be doing next year in August at Lake Santilla, and I was doing one of the activities. And during the activity, I was actually had this beautiful opportunity to be floating in the lake, and I'm just like, feeling it. The sun's coming down, and I'm having this moment. And without getting into that whole experience, I then got out of the water. I got up onto the dock. My hot feet sent me into my body. But instead of being myself as I am now, I felt, and one would say the memory of my 10-year-old self, that reminder of the sun being down and I'm at the Sun and Fun pool and I'm in that moment. But instead of being in that memory of me, instead what happened was I felt like I was that me. Like that me was in, like I wasn't this version of me anymore. I was just that 10-year-old version of me inside. And I was having that really immersive experience. And in that moment, I realized that so many times as adults, we think that we're this better version of us, and we're this version that, like, we have so much to teach this young, we can support, we can comfort, and we do support and comfort appropriately that version of us. But that version of us also has something really beautiful to gift us and share with us. Just like in any relationship, it's mutual. And what happened was is I felt and I realized this wasn't a remembering, because I never really understood how much of a mystic that version of me was. But what happened was is by being that 10-year-old version of me and receiving this memory, I realized that version of me knew how to be fully present. That version of me knew how to feel the heat underneath my feet. It knew how to feel the coolness of the water dripping. It actually, I forgot it, that whole memory came about because when I went like this and got the water out of my ear, it went and it dripped out. And then all this water dropped down. And it was like that water shooting off my body, coming out of the pool and now coming out of the lake, shot me into this memory and this whole recollection. And then what I realized was is that version of me knows how to be fully present, to not be planning for anything later on, to just be experiencing that I'm getting ready to have a cold soda. I'm getting ready to sit down on a wet towel on the hot ground and just experience that whole thing really richly. And feeling that version of me, I was like, that part of me is in me that has something. I haven't gone past that version of me. That's the foundation for why I am who I am now, which feels like I'm now more whole, because when I realize that that version of me is inside of me and all these other versions that have grown, that's how I am who I am. It's not the bad parts of them. Like there's nothing bad. It's like integrating all of the rich wisdom that each version of me, all those little morsels of goodness that I learned to do throughout my life, is the accumulation. Now I'm accumulated into this whole person who has all of those wonderful experiences that have built into me.
I'm so excited that you just talked about accumulating, because as you're saying this, I had two things come and I took notes so I don't forget them. The first one was a lot of coaches and therapists will talk about reparenting ourselves. But what if there's an opportunity to rewild and rechild ourselves?
Mm.
Like, what if we don't need to be reparented? What if we need to be rechilded.
I really like this.
I do too. And here's the image that I got to go along with it, because there's trees behind me. I was thinking, when you cut into a tree, it's not hollow. There are rings built upon rings. It's like we've said so many times, nature knows, nature is just authentic. And we have these like childhood rings inside of us that
Mm-hmm.
that are the foundation, that are the core, that are the essence, that are the more authentic expression of ourselves. Why aren't we inviting them to our work? Why aren't we inviting them to the party? Like, who I showed up as when I was 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh man, she was so fun, and she was so present, and she wasn't there was nothing to be concerned or worried about. She just was. Like, she loved to get dirty and draw with chalk on the sidewalk, and draw every kind of whale that she could think of, because she did research and she thought it was cool, and she didn't care if anyone else thought she was a geek, because she loved all the different varieties of whales that there were. And I drew like the dichotomy of whales, and I'm remembering this part of me, like, she was so fun and free. What if we what if we brought those selves
Yeah.
into our work? And you just spent this weekend playing, and this
Playing.
feels really, really important right now.
It really does. Yeah, thank you for that's beautiful, like that rewilding and rechilding. I there's been something I didn't have language for it yet. I was thinking about how the reparenting language. I was thinking about that after my weekend. And I was like, I think I'm reluctant to use that word anymore because I want to let our parents off the hook. They just did the best they could.
Yeah.
Parents are like, I mean, I get choked up thinking about that. I mean, as a woman who doesn't have kids, I was pretty sure I'd muck it up. And so when I think about people as parents, I think, wow, you're really brave to be a parent, to be responsible for another child and another living being. And I think parents literally just do the best they can. And what if instead of reparenting, like suggesting that something that they did was wrong when they just really did the best they could? Like you said, what if it's that as individuals who there's like now we're adults who have this version of us inside of us that has so much wisdom that if we're getting to the essence of we get to the version of ourselves that before we got poured up on top of and we got it all messed up, like we got it all like, oh, we're not enough, or oh, we don't this or that, and we tell ourselves what we can't do or why we're not good enough. That version of us, that younger version of us, just like you said, like it was wild. Like didn't really care about what, like they didn't even know we should be self-conscious, didn't even know we shouldn't have self, didn't even know any of that, much like nature. And that's what I was telling you about nature this weekend is that I realized that the essence of of nature has so much wisdom to reflect back to us about ourselves. Like we're an extension of that, but the essence of us is our wild child that is wild in a way that it's wild meaning just you, which is the work that we do, the authenticity. It's who we are before we get self-conscious about that. And you talked about confidence, and I think it kind of gets to that, like as an entrepreneur, we need to be confident.
Mm,
We need confidence
yeah.
or else we can't be successful. This is why people don't make it because we tell ourselves we believe all the rhetoric that got poured on top of us. But the essence of our confidence is reconnecting with that part of ourselves that knows that we're good enough, that knows that we're uniquely different, and those differences are assets.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So this is beautiful because this transitions perfectly. But what I had written down was, as an adult woman, I carry around a lot of self-doubt sometimes. And what does it take to transmute that? I don't like using the language of like conquering it or fighting it. I like transmuting it, because transmuting it means that we're taking something that's not broken, that just is part of us, and creating something beautiful from that. So what I wrote down was that transmuting our self-doubt is a remembering. And remembering means to put something back together. Like my arm is a member of my body, and I'm remembering, I'm putting it back together,
Mm.
which means I never lacked anything. I was always whole and complete. And perhaps the world and my experiences have pulled me apart, but I have a choice to put myself back together and to remember self. And in that remembering, what happens is we realize that we're fully equipped, and being fully equipped, we can be fully confident. And confidence, again, confidence comes from the Latin word confidere. And con in Latin means an intensive force, and fidere, fidelity, fidere is trust. So confidence is an intensive force of trust. And in that, there is a recognition of the fact that I trust myself. So we get all back into this place of that there is no one else in whom I need to trust. I trust my remembered self, and I am confident.
What would that look like? I mean, imagine so many women and so many people in general, not just women, so many people in general don't have that self-confidence or that intense trust in themselves. And I think from a woman in her own business, what would that look like? What would that take in order to become like where do you begin if you don't identify with this and you don't like say and you're like like I just don't like I'm scared. I'm always thinking who can help me with this or and help is always a good thing, but when it comes from a place of delegation and not lack of ability, right?
You begin at
So
the place you last felt confidence.
mm,
When did you last feel fully confident in yourself? It might take
well
some digging.
and I think not only where, because I think that's a really important element. This gets to the as you say, rewilding, right? This gets to the play because that's where you can start to dig into where did I feel, confident last, right? Um, gosh, I'm gonna have to think about this. This is I'm like kind of geeking out on like the number of places that one can go to begin again or to not even begin again,
Yeah.
to reconnect
Yeah.
with those spaces. I think another place is where do you currently feel confident and is it there are there transferable skills? So many
Yeah.
times, like for example, when I've had women on my teams that were really confident about their ability to be a parent and had multiple kids, I would be like, oh my gosh, like, and they would be like, I don't know if I can become a supervisor or I can manage or I can do this or that. And I was like, oh my God, you do it all the time. I was like,
Yeah.
literally, you are balancing this and this and this and this. And you tell me about this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, you know how to prioritize and multitask. And, like, there's all of these transferable skills. And once somebody understands that the areas that they're already crushing it are skill sets that can be moved into this other area. And when it's a seed in this area with the essence of that skill, then it blooms and you do what you're doing in this industry in a way that is uniquely yours because of your strengths. right? Or a way that you're
Yeah.
cultivated that you already have a lot of experience. It's transferable experience. When people are like, "Oh, I don't have experience doing that." Yes, you do.
Mm.
But what happens is in a male workforce, those aren't allowed to be transferable skills.
Mm.
Oftentimes it's like, "Oh, no, we're talking about work. We're talking about when have you done this in a job?" Well, when was I given an opportunity? Many women, when was I given an opportunity to be at the table? And so if I'm not at the table, I bloom where I'm planted. And many times in our history, we've bloomed in domestically, but those are transferable skills that we're seeing successfully come out in entrepreneurs because we don't have to constantly prove ourselves or to prove our worth, because with each other, we know those are transferable skills. I don't have to be a mother to understand and appreciate the value of the skills that women are bringing to the household and how those are transferable. You don't have to prove that to me. Oftentimes I'm actually the one that goes, "Oh, those are transferable skills. Like, I like that. This is we can build on this. I can't wait to see what you do with this because of who you already are." But it's different when we're working together because we already know the value and how hard it is
Mm.
to do that work.
Yeah. Another thing that I was thinking of when you were talking about that was just um I feel like as a woman, I operate from a place of compassion a lot of the time. And compassion, again, words, man, compassion means to suffer with. It's not empathy. Empathy is like kind of, I can feel what you're feeling, but that almost co-opts the feeling. But compassion is like, no, I'm gonna get in this with you and just be present and be with you. And in a workplace where there are many women who are operating from this space, I think it gives us an opportunity to maybe slow down a little, maybe want to hear one another, and maybe just have be equipped to trust one another better. Because you don't have to prove, like you said, you don't have to prove to me that this is valuable to you. I can just see that you're feeling that this is valuable and that you have some really deep excitement over this, or whatever it may be. And you don't have to explain to me and give me the 12-step plan and tell me why you want to implement this idea or why this is important. I just know that it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you say that. I'm thinking about, we did an episode a couple of podcasts ago about the web. And when we're as women entrepreneurs, it's also really important who's in our professional and our friend web, because if you have professionals around you that don't recognize the value of what you're doing or what you're offering or how you're doing what you're doing, then that permeates into the like you feel that you feel that whether that's spoken or unspoken, you feel that. And so when you have intentional friends and not just ones that you feel obligated to stick with, but when you have intentional friends and intentional professionals around you that are in that mindset of that growth mindset, that willingness to learn from other people, when you're willing to learn from somebody else and you listen to deeply to how other people are successfully doing what they're doing, and it's a way that's different than yours, it by just the act of eagerly listening, that in and of itself translates to that person as, you find what I'm doing valuable. as opposed to the rhetoric of, I think sometimes in many fields that we've been in, people think that when I say this to you and I say, I value you, that translates to you valuing me. But in a web that is action oriented, it's not what you say to me. It's what you do. It's how you act. That translates to me. I don't need you to tell me I value you. I need you to value me. And that is translates through many actions, listening deeply, hearing what I'm saying, reflecting it back, wanting to get it to how I understand it, not wanting the way that you hope that I am saying this to be reflected, right? But really genuinely being open. So I think there's so much, as I see different, women intentionally building their networks. We call them networks in this other world, right? But they really are kind of circles. And, I think it's still kind of evolving what it is, but it's a feeling over a word. And sometimes we try to give it language, which is important, but it also isn't.
Mm. Yeah. So I'm looking over here and I have written down something about our voice and about activating our voice. And I think that naturally progresses from what you were just talking about, from this network web connection, from this how I feel it is this space where I can show up and be seen and be valued and really valued in action. And that gives me permission to speak in that space and to be heard. And when I speak in that space because it's the right place, then there's this really cool thing that happens where I can hear what I'm saying is being received. I can see what I'm saying is being put into action. It's like bringing your candle into a space where everyone else has candles. It can be lit, and all of a sudden you see all the flames start to grow. And you're
Can
like,
I
whoa,
share
that was
my
really
quote
cool.
with your story?
Yes, please.
So when I was in the kayak this weekend, and the friend and colleague that was there with me building this retreat experience, all of a sudden I'm across the lake. I'm just coming out of a cove, and she's way the heck across the lake. And I cannot begin to tell you, I don't understand how such a pristine place has nobody out there in a boat. But here we are for hours, no boats anywhere. It's quiet. And all of a sudden she goes, woo! And she just yells. And it was like, woo, woo, woo. The echo went. And I
Yeah.
started laughing hysterically. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And then I was like, woo! And you heard the reverberation. And immediately in my mind, I heard, in the right place, your voice will reverberate.
Yeah.
And I'd like to hear you riff more on this, but that really it really resonated with me that here I was, like, if you're in a boardroom that you don't necessarily feel like, people are listening, if you're in um, a meeting where everybody's talking over everybody else, I was like, in this space, in this moment, it's the perfect conditions for what I have to say to just bounce off the trees, bounce off water, bounce. And I was like, this translates. This translates to life. You want to find a life where your voice reverberates.
Oh my gosh. This is so cool. Okay. So, whoa, yes, this is exciting. All right. So when I think of the individuals who you surround yourself with in these relationships, work, life, whatever they may be, the quality of the individual who can reflect and echo back at you is someone who is crystallized, like someone who is self-assured, who is confident, who is authentic, who is integrated. And the reason why this is so cool, my dog's gonna go talk to the neighbors right now because they're gonna bark back and forth at each other and just
Run free,
demonstrate this
Bobby,
concept.
run free.
Um,
Yeah.
but what causes an echo is that a sound wave is reflected back off of a smooth, hard object in the same way that a rubber ball would bounce off the ground. So it takes a smooth, hard object to reflect that sound back. And that's why, for example, that's why a voice will echo better in like a cathedral or a space where there's a lot of hard, smooth surfaces versus one that has sound dampening things, which when we're in spaces where people don't know themselves or aren't integrated, they can't even reflect themselves.
Right.
How could we expect them to reflect us, to
Yeah.
echo and see us?
Well, it's interesting though, what you're saying. So we talk about lenses and filters. We talked about that on the last episode. So what you're saying is, how can they reflect back to us through the lens and filter of what they are? But what you're saying is that when we're expressing something, it's like you don't want it to go in and then be gone through that person to come back out. There's a purity in that person is exactly who they are. So they're not needing it to go into them and being filtered through them. Instead, they're receiving yours without the need to transmute it, without the need to change it, without the need to do anything, but just that purity of that reflection comes from the confidence in them that who they are
Yeah.
and how they are is exactly perfectly fine. It's
Yeah.
beautiful in it, you are not a reflection of them. You do not need to. Like, there's nothing
Yep.
to come through them and filter out. There's that purity, I think, in that experience.
Yeah.
You interviewed Carol May Whittick, and I listened to that interview, and I'll tell you, it was so impactful to me. I actually wanted to reach out to Carol May myself and have her on my show. And when I met with her, I said, "Listen, I had 7 pages and I flipped through. I was like, you talked for an hour and I had 7 pages of notes from your interview. It was so impactful. And one of the beautiful things that came from our conversation, she was talking about, she has that program, her higher
Higher
energetic
energetic
resonance.
resonance. Yeah.
And she talks in there about how she helps people, mainly women, find their voice and cultivate their voice. And you mentioned, we've been talking about a lot about voice, and as a woman entrepreneur, your voice is incredibly important. Your voice, not what you think you should be doing here, not what other people in other industries. I think market research is great, but we over rely on it. And sometimes our intuition is what we need to listen to do something uniquely different, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's
Absolutely.
beautiful what she's doing. I think for those of you out there that are interested, her work is if you're somebody who is interested in the mechanics, like it's interesting. Like sometimes we think, well, to use your voice more, you just use your voice more. But she
Mm-hmm.
really gets into the mechanism of your voice box and how
Yeah.
this connects you, your head and your heart. If this isn't working, then how do you use your voice? Like she really helps you activate mechanically your voice, which has a transferable impact to who you are and your mindset and everything. It's almost like it frees it up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I loved when she gave the example in the interview when I interviewed her of how her voice sounded before and
Mm-hmm.
after.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed the exact, this is why I was like, so man, talking to her and hearing her say this, I had this happen to me, the same thing. When I was younger, my voice would be up in here and it was stuck. It just felt stuck. Like it felt like I was constantly choked up when I would try to say something. And in fact, sometimes when I would try to speak and I really wanted to say something and I really felt passionate about it, I would just cry. I wouldn't actually be able to get out what I
Mm.
needed to say. And I've noticed as I've really come home into myself, my voice has dropped. Like my voice almost comes from like my heart center now. Like I can put my hand here and I can feel the reverberation of my voice as I'm speaking.
Mm.
But it's also got this deeper, darker quality to it, which is like sinking into and owning who I am and feeling really, really at home in her.
Oh my God. I'm gonna have that moment you had earlier where I'm like, oh my God. So a couple of things. Number one, I'm gonna repeat that phrase. In the right place, your voice will reverberate. I was thinking about that's us. Not even outside of us. Like I was thinking outside of us, in the right place, our voice will reverberate.
Mm,
But as we're whole, as this is opened
mm.
up
Oh my gosh.
inside, it's always as in, there's always
As
this like,
above, so below, as within, so
exactly.
without. Yeah.
And so it's like, it's us. The right place, your voice will reverberate. It's like suddenly something, when you are whole, when this is open, suddenly your voice and what you have to say will reverberate inside of you, which then gives you this confidence, right? It just gives you this confidence. So the other thing with this, I have to share this real quick. Keep
Okay.
whatever you were going to say. I want to hear
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Um, but you talked about your voice sounding different. Carol May talked about her voice sounding different, and I have to share this story. So when I was a kid, I really wanted to have a voice like Stevie Nicks. I was like,
yeah.
"Ooh, Stevie Nicks' voice! Ah, it's just awesome." And so I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna become a smoker." So I could get that deep voice, like it's smoky, like smoke. It's a smoky voice, you know. So for like 10 years, I was a smoker. I quit smoking. I realized, that wasn't good. That it's got a lot of bad effects. But I realized I hadn't really thought of it. But as in the last few years, like I've always been working to be more myself and authentic, and I think people that know me will be like, "Girl, you're just you." But I mean me in a way that not just is okay for other people, but like for me, like my voice, like what's right for me, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense outside of me. And I found that my voice has gotten deeper over the last few years. It's got, just this real depth to it. And after this weekend, I did my video for my podcast. And I while I'm talking, I'm like, who is this? At this moment of your voice sounds so deep. And I was like, but I like it. And it was like something within me. It was like I wanted to lean into that and be like, that feels right. That feels right. Right. And it gets into that when you're experiencing your authentic truth and you're feeling like through that play and through that witnessing of nature and having all of these experiences to tap into myself and be integrated and feel whole. It was like my voice was reverberating inside myself. And so it was like my true voice could come out.
I'm glad that you went there and you stopped me because now what I have to say is like even more impactful.
Good. I
Okay.
intuitively knew to do that. So
So what I had written down was the way in which our cells, which are mainly water, respond to vibration and resonance. Like if you've ever seen the different examples of tones being played and the pattern that it generates in a bowl of water. So that's what I was picturing. And I wrote down resonance at a cellular level changes water. So therefore you could extrapolate that dropping into our authentic and integrated vocal resonance where I can actually feel my voice in my body and I'm embodying my voice changes me at a cellular level. So being able to speak my truth and own my truth and resonate my truth in my authentic voice will actually bring about a change that I'm not even fully conscious of, but it starts to do something. And you had these moments over your weekend with water, like you were just surrounded by water. And I think that there's something here that maybe you could reflect better because you experienced it, but the voice, like I was watching your video just before we started. I could hear that. Like I was hearing you and I was like, whoa, I'm like really hearing you right now. Like you were really, I don't even know the words for it. Just fully embodied, like really immersed in the experience. Like you were still there and it was fresh and you were talking about it. And man, that's powerful.
Thank you for reflecting that back. It's when you were talking, I realized in that moment, I wasn't in my head. I felt like one of those, when you have uh, those bags, it's almost like those big punching bag things that have the base that's so heavy, but it's like not synthetic, but it's like some sort of substance that's filling it. And it's like you can't even move it. Like it's like if you tried to move it, you couldn't. I felt like I was so firmly planted, so grounded in myself. And I just trusted, like as I was talking, I felt so embodied. I felt so like whatever I have to say is going to come out. And it was just like this day. I felt open. It was like it all felt open. And it was like I was really grounded. Like when we say we try to become grounded, it's like I realized, oh, I'm trying to be grounded, but I'm actually grounded. I felt really firm, like just the base of me. Um, and what it reminded me of while you were talking was, I think intuitively, when we start to activate our intuition in our ability to connect with our truth and our openness, like in with us, I think what happens is that as we tap into our truth, as we become open, when we're in environments that we can't reverberate, our voice can't reverberate. It has to go through a filter. We can't stay. I was thinking about that in my workplace. Beautiful place, but my voice, my truth didn't feel like it could reverberate there. It felt like it was constantly going out and it was coming back different. And I was like, why is this going out and coming back different? Why is what I'm saying not what I'm saying? And so there's a place that sometimes we have to, like for me, I had to leave because it was, wait, I'm not, I'm not here. I'm like anything I say is not reverberating, which wasn't my experience the entire time, but it ended up being my experience. And that was actually like Gabby Bernstein said, obstacles or detours in the right direction. It's not something to be upset about. It was a new season. It's not anything negative with them or with me. It was just a new season for both of us. And so I'm sure I have to trust that if it was right for me, it was right for them.
I actually had that quote written down in my notes for today. The obstacles are detours in the right direction. And I also wrote down what you had said just after that, because I think there's a really important piece of discernment that goes here. And yes, we have guests.
Yeah.
That
Just like real
anxiety
shows.
that anxiety can also signal when maybe the obstacles are in the wrong direction. Like
Ooh.
there's a piece of discernment. Like it doesn't always mean that when you hit an obstacle it's the right direction, so keep going. There's also a space of, I hit this obstacle and it looks like an obstacle, but maybe it's just a wall. And maybe when I keep running up against that wall, I start to feel some anxiety and some pain there. And maybe that's the wrong direction. How do you tell the difference?
Ooh. It's interesting too, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, um, what if anxiety wasn't a deficit, but it was a clue that you need to, it's your body actually saying, go in a different direction. You got to go around or you got to turn back. So it's that go around or turn back. But it's like, what if it's like if you were in the wild and you were a an antelope and all of a sudden you felt anxiety because of something that you took in, you would either go, do am I gonna turn around because there's danger, or am I gonna go around this? Like, is this a river that I have to cross, or is this um a lion and I need to run away? Like it's a but the anxiety itself, the emotion itself isn't anything wrong. It's actually a metric or a piece of information that says you need to do something.
Oh my
And for,
gosh.
yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just I wrote down that maybe it's an intuitive clue.
yes,
Maybe it's just an intuitive
yeah,
clue.
yeah.
And then I also thought back, because we were talking about younger selves before we started recording. If I would have listened in the times where I felt that yucky anxiety, would have been a totally different path, totally different direction. If I could have been fully integrated in those moments and gone, that didn't feel right. Maybe this isn't for me. And I would have just done the pivot that I needed to do then.
Hmm.
Not that not that I want that, because who I am now and where I've become, who I've become now is exactly where and who I need to be and who I
Yeah.
want to be.
Hmm.
So not that I want to go in a different direction, but perhaps we can take this now as women entrepreneurs, as grown adult women, and say anxiety is not a problem. It's an intuitive clue. And
Yes.
if I can learn to transmute it and utilize it, whoa, that's powerful. That's a superpower. It's like another sense. I don't need to mute it. I just need to listen better.
Yes. What is it trying to tell me? What is it trying to tell me as opposed to deny, suppress, push down? Like, what if instead, like you said, it's an intuitive clue and we look at it like, what is it trying to tell me? Is it trying to tell me to go around, or is it trying to tell me to go back? Is it trying to tell me to do something different? What is it trying to tell me? And I think as women entrepreneurs, that's one of the things that, we have to be able to sit in that discernment and ask ourselves, so what is this here to tell me? When you're working on a project, when you've got a product and it's not, moving like what you think it should, or like at this particular juncture, you're doing all the things and it doesn't seem to be getting any traction. Is it that you need a new strategy? Is this that you're not getting it to the people who would benefit from it? Is it that you need to have a new product? Is it like you could go on and on and on, but the question is what is this here to tell me? And if we had a innate energetic stance of curiosity and to explore it, versus there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I think traditional business models, the way that they're structured with all the KPIs and all this stuff, and I think goals are incredibly important, and to understand where you are is incredibly important. But oftentimes, what happens in industries is they say, we want to do this within a year. What makes you think that's possible? Like you're just coming
Yeah.
up with some arbitrary number that you don't even know if you were to follow this and you were to keep having a curiosity and you were to keep having some momentum with it. That project is going to tell you if you're really invested in it and you're putting the proper resources and time on it. That project is going to tell you when it's done, but you're trying to put the end first. And not all things, especially when it comes to human beings, can be, you can't calculate how services or products are going to move through human beings. You can, like, if you've got a factory line and you're trying to do widgets, then you can figure out probably that because it's a fixed metric, fixed system. But human beings are not fixed. It's confusing. There's a lot of variables. The more human beings you put in a project, the more variables there are. And so many times I think that's what we're responding to is that something is off and we can't put language to it. That's the anxiety. We're like, something doesn't match here. And then you say, like, I remember sometimes saying in industries, like, I don't know that this is feasible. And people are like, you need to be more optimistic. And I'm like, hang on a second. I'm not opposed to that. But I also think there's more to it that's not an excuse. It's honoring the complexity of human growth and when you're serving human beings that are different and variable and even trying to get a product or a service that applies to everyone by doing it one way seems challenging to me. Like I'm one of those people that's a little skeptical of evidence-based practice because evidence-based practices, I'm like, I get it, but as long as there's some, oftentimes it has to be very A, B, C, and D. And I don't know that A, B, C, and D would work for any of the people that I know that are very much like me around me. So how is it going to work in a completely unconnected system of people that don't have the same resources, perspective, lenses? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I do because
yeah,
you just brought it right back around to where we started, which is
a strange
seeing
loop.
it holistically. Yeah, seeing it holistically as women who see the colors bleed into one another, who see the connections, who allow the integration. Why can't I have B1 and D at the same time? Why can't I pull in this piece and this piece and see what would happen if maybe we do this? And just there's just such a powerful way of looking at things when we just let things like water, just let liquids just come in and integrate with one another. And I was thinking when you were talking about what sort of environment allows for that. And it's again, it's coming back to that pace and the space and the rest you were talking about, instead of fight or flight, about rest and reset. That women have this natural way of, when the anxiety bubbles up or when a problem comes up, instead of fight, flight, freeze, we're like, hold on, just let me sit with this. Let's like slow down. Let's get quiet. Let's give it space. Let's just allow. Let's just hold it and see what comes up.
I'm glad you brought this up because this is you're referencing Elizabeth Lesser's work out of Omega Institute, and she mentions this, and I can't remember if it's Broken Open or Cassandra Speaks, but I love her work and what she talks about, and you know she talks about, like, you know, actually, like, we try to put women into this fight, flight, flee, freeze dynamic, but in actuality, women tend to have a more, when they experience conflict or they are triggered, we have more of a tendency to um, rest and repair and tend
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh my gosh, isn't that like a recipe for isn't that like the kind of mindset that you would want in conflict? Is to rest and repair and tend and mend. Like, imagine if we were in positions of influence instead of power in the world and in businesses, that you had a resting innate tendency towards tending and mending and rest and repair instead of fight, fight. How beneficial could it be to have that kind of a mindset? And I'm one of those people that doesn't think that you should take it to the other extreme. I'm not saying women should rule the world, but I think we have a seat at the table and maybe at the head of the table, depending on what the industry and what is happening is and what the outcome is that we're trying to have. If there needs to be reconciliation, if there needs to be a
Mm.
bridging connection, and that's our strength and our superpower,
This
then
country.
why wouldn't we be have our voice reverberating?
Mm.
Like, this is where you need our voice, right?
Yeah.
So um
Man, that's
yeah.
beautiful. I have notes on my notes right now.
That's a
Things
good
are
conversation.
circled and squared and yeah. Oh my
Yeah, me too.
gosh.
I've got like this and this. It went all over, but um yeah, I think one thing I just kind of want to wrap up with for myself is I think when we're women and we're in business and we're trying to do things in a way that feels authentic and innately um, right to us, authentic to us, there needs to be this space for our flexibility in a way that is responsive to what we're rubbing up against. Does this feel right or wrong in that discernment? Um, and I remember thinking, like, so many times in industry, and this is what I love about women entrepreneurs. I think there's some part of us that innately, when I was in traditional business, I loved what I was doing. I loved the mission, but I always felt like I always knew that I always had in the back of my mind that there was a financial ceiling on my worth. That even if I went all the way to the CEO, there'd still be a ceiling on my worth, on my value. And I remember thinking, I don't know what I have to contribute as worth, but I know that I want to be in a space where my voice is actually reverberating, that I get to do what I discern is the right thing to do, that I don't have to convince other people of that, and that there's no ceiling on my worth. Whatever it is that I'm offering, that the people who find it valuable will get to participate in that, but there's no like, this is as much as what you're offering is worth. Like, the universe says the value.
Mm.
So I
Yeah,
think
and
that's something beautiful that we have the opportunity as women to walk into and not say how much, like, what can I, like, no, like, we've got to have a different mindset. Like, we're doing things different. And I hope that people, instead of just trying to get into that hustle mentality and to have enough, I hope that we can talk about, like, that's one of the things I'm interested in talking about, is the mindset of no, 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 no. This is about, oh, the universe is gonna, it's gonna proportionately, it's gonna keep growing. And the more I believe in myself and what I'm doing and my voice is reverberating, the more the echo and the ripple is out into the world.
yeah, I was just going to add that all of that, and for me, I want to do something that is so genuine to me that I couldn't not do it at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to be doing work where every day I wake up and it's a natural expression of who I am as a person. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want my whole life to be that genuine.
I want to give you an example. So this weekend, my colleague and I needed to talk about some of the details of the retreat. And I said, I'm going to grab some paper. I'm going to grab 2 pens, stick them in a backpack. Let's get out on the kayaks and go in the middle of the lake and have our meet. And she was like, what? And I go, yeah. I was like, why wouldn't we? Why are we compartmentalizing and doing, oh, we're supposed to have a meeting and then we're supposed to go to the lake? Why wouldn't we go to the lake and have our meeting? Why does it have to be separate? If this is where we feel the most alive and we feel centered in, and we feel like, ah, oh, we don't want to be anywhere else but here, isn't that the perfect place to have the meeting? So I have this crumpled up piece of paper that I stuffed back into the backpack. And I said to her after our meeting, I go, here's our meeting notes. And I was like, that's spectacular. Forget on the computer and making them all perfect. I was like, this has been the best meeting ever. And I've got it on a crumpled piece of paper and I've been writing like this. And it's like, perfect.
But this is the place for the Aqua Notepad.
Yeah,
Where
right.
was your Aqua Notepad?
Right. There's no place to put it. Oh, I guess I could. Yeah.
Oh.
So beautiful. Do you have anything you'd like to? I feel good.
Yeah.
Thank you. What a great discussion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So good.
Yeah.
So good. And this is just another example of the amplification and expansiveness that comes from leaving space for things to, as we say, unfold.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can learn more about Melissa and her work at melissamossart.com. And thank you, of course, to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song, There's So Much Energy in Us. You can learn more about them at cloudcult.com. And thank you, friends, for listening. And until next time, peace, love, and light.